Hi everyone, in this video we are going to jump back over to the project we were working on with the inverted pleats and the contrasting fabric. In this video I'm just going to show you a few finishing techniques for those interior seam lines. So for the red skirt it is right side out, and then on this green and yellow skirt it is inside out. So you can see on the insides of these pleats all of the seam allowances are tucked underneath. So from the interior view of the garment, there isn't really too much concern with those seams being finished or unfinished. But for longer lasting wear and a cleaner finish on the inside, you will want to finish these interior seam allowances so that they're not fraying over time, and it gives a more professional look to the overall garment. So if we started by cutting them all separately and then you wanted to go back and finish the edges individually for every single rectangle, that could be pretty time consuming. So I have a couple tips for cutting these out in long strips and finishing them first before we separate them into the individual rectangles that will help speed up the process. So for this example, I'm working with a 1/2 yard cut of fabric. So the length right here is 18 inches. Now the two pieces for the skirt that I have are both 4 inches in length, and what I did for the original tutorial was 13 of the 2.5 inch wide and 12 of the 1.5 inch wide. So instead of cutting them all separately, we're going to cut a long strip that would line up like this. So I will end up cutting them in 4-inch pieces once I cut the long strips. Now, if you have more yardage and you can do this in one long strip to get all 13 pieces at one time, you can do that. But for many projects, you might only have a 1/2 yard. So we're just saving a little bit of time by cutting these for this particular size. We'll cut 4 from each strip. So I'm just going to need 4 strips cut right here that are 2.5 inches wide. Okay, so here I have the 4 strips cut. They're 2.5 inches wide for that interior section of the contrast fabric. So for this example, they will run tall, and we're going to finish the whole interior seam line before we cut them apart. So this will go pretty quickly. We have 2 options. We can finish it on a machine with a serged edge or a zigzag edge on both sides. Or you could choose to use a product called Fray Check. It's a liquid that you would apply directly to the fabric just along the edge, and then you wait for it to dry, and this will prevent fraying. So this works pretty good. The machine methods with the serging or the zigzagging does have a little bit more professional finish, so you'll just want to choose which technique works best for your project. Here I am at the machine. I have my strip of fabric, and I'm going to finish the edges with a zigzag stitch. I like to do this with the fabric wrong side up, because when you stitch your zigzag, it has a tendency to roll it slightly up towards the stitching, so that helps to finish this edge a little bit cleaner. So I'll simply set my fabric under the presser foot, and I have it right at the center so that the zigzag overlaps the edge of the fabric, and I'm just going to do that down the entire length of my 18-inch strip. So there I have one side finished. Then I'm going to spin it around and we will zigzag down the opposite side. Then I'll go ahead and repeat that for the other strips if I have more strips, but if I did cut this all in one strip, then I would be ready at this point to divide my pieces. Here we have 3 sample strips. The first one not finished at all. The second one has been finished with that zigzag stitch, and then the third one is the one that we applied Fray Check to on the edge. So I'm just going to show you how they all respond to being finished or not finished. So this is the original, and if you pull on this, you are going to get fraying that happens because this is a woven fabric, and over time it will fray and lose strings from the fabric on the interior of the garment. Now on the zigzagged fabric, and you can see that a little bit better here on the interior wrong side of the fabric, this is a very small zigzag, and if I pull on this, I don't lose any interior threads along this seam allowance line. It is finished nicely. This is a very small zigzag. And if you sew this with a thread color that matches your fabric, it will blend right in, and this will have a nice, clean, professional finish. Now the fray check option is dry at this point. I can feel it on here, but I can no longer see it. So once it dries, it becomes invisible. And if I pull on this, this is a little bit crisp on the edge, and this doesn't fray at all. So this is a great way to finish those interior pleat lines. Again, because they're hidden inside the pleat, and because this doesn't add any bulk or puckering to the fabric. It's a nice clean finish, and it works great on the woven fabrics. Then at this point, I would simply go ahead and just cut my pieces into the length that was needed for the skirt. So for this skirt, they're 4 inches long. So I would just set that down, and if I had a few strips, I could stack them on top of each other and cut them all at the same time. And here you can see how we have these pieces now cut apart. So we have them cut into their small rectangles, and all the edges are finished. So now when we take them with the smaller piece and sew them right sides together and form all of the pleats, all of the interior seam lines and seam allowance raw edges will be finished. And this is a very lightweight way to do that with the zigzag. And then these pieces here were cut with the fray check, and these also have a nice, clean, finished edge. So I hope this has helped give you some good quick ideas for how to finish the interior seam allowances on a project like this. It will give you a quick finish and a professional look.